What's up, guys? Welcome to our live stream. We're here in Cumberland, Rhode Island for our second live stream, and today we're talking about the MC7000. 7000 is a powerhouse, very versatile controller. I've used it for a couple of years now for my mobile and my club gigs, and it's served me quite well. So I'm really excited to share, how I use it, and also kind of show you some under the hood settings and preferences that you may not be aware of. So I've got a lot in store for the live stream, as well as looking forward to your questions. So make sure you're getting your questions in on Facebook or YouTube. Also make sure you're following us on all of our social channels so you can keep up to date with everything we got going on in these live streams as we go forward. First thing I want to announce is that today we just launched our downloads page on the denondj.com website. So now you can go on the website, right across the top there, you can go to support and then downloads, and you've got a beautiful layout of all the products with downloads for firmware, mapping files, user guides, and even some further details and information about the product. But it's in one nice page with everything consolidated, and the flow of the page is very nice. So if you're looking for downloads or firmware or anything like that, make sure you go to the www.denondj.com and then check out the download section under the support tab. All right, so let's get right into it. The first thing I want to show you guys is the brand new hardware settings mode that was introduced in firmware 1.2. So first I'm going to go ahead over to the controller and I'm going to power off the device. So now once it's powered off, I can hold down the back and the panel button, and then I can release it while it's powering up. And this should bring me into my hardware settings mode. And you notice here that all the LEDs didn't come on, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. So this is the hardware settings mode that will give you the opportunity to dial in things a little bit more, depending on your environment or the gig that you're working in. So starting at the left, you can see we got this talkover light that's flashing. What that setting is there, that's for your talkover speed. So right now as it's flashing, that means my talkover resume speed is going to be resuming faster than normal. I can just press that, press it off with shift. Once it's solid, that means it's a slow resume. I like to have the music come back quite quickly after I stop speaking, so I leave that on fast. The next setting we're going to talk about is the platters. So you can actually adjust the sensitivity of the touch jog plate on the platter. So what's cool about this is right here in the center, that's the default setting, and this will work for most applications and for most users. But if you feel like it's too sensitive or it's not sensitive enough, you can refine that. And then you can also, just by touching it, you see the sensor here is illuminated, and this shows you that the actual sensitivity is working. If you need to adjust it, we hold down. We just refer to the manual here real quick. If you refer to, hold down the sensor button, turning the select encoder on the left. So we just dial in here, final, actually what is it? Select encoder, turn it, sensor. So actually, I actually don't want to mess with that right now, but I want to show you the other settings. So if I go to channel 3 here, this is going to be for my microphone talkover level. And so I can resume or change that by holding down the Q and then turning the select encoder here. And all those settings are listed in the PDF that was included with the firmware. And again, you can also adjust the microphone attenuation if we hold down Q1 and turn the encoder. And then you can adjust the MIDI transmission interval time by holding down split and adjusting the select encoder. And most of these settings, right out of the box are going to work for you. But again, if you need to dial in a little bit more, refer to that manual there, and they will allow you to kind of tailor the device more specific to what you need to do at your application. And we can just quickly get out of this mode by pressing back on either side. And so one quick thing that I always do when I get to my gig is I turn off all the LEDs, because having them all on can be sometimes overwhelming in the environment. So if you hold down the shift and press on the corresponding deck button, that will turn that on or off, so you've got the inverted version of that. So let's just plug in the controller. All right, let me jump over and see what kind of questions we've got coming in. All right, nothing coming in yet, so I'll just continue to go through. So again, you can turn these off just by holding down Shift, pressing the deck button. The 7000 is a dual USB controller, and I have it configured here in a couple of different ways. I'm using it with Serato, and I'm also using it with Algorithm DJ Pro, which is pretty nice. They recently updated the application, so it's a fully featured app for the hardware. I'm going to just show you guys what I have here on my setup. Let's see if we can get this camera to cooperate. All right, so this is my typical gig board here. I've got this case that has the mounts underneath for my racks. So I've got a couple of wireless mic systems installed in there, and then I've got everything in the back of the case. The cables are as neat as you can get them. You know, with lots of stuff coming in, it's difficult to keep it as clean and tidy. But you know, having these cases like this with the rack mount inside allows you to add more things. So I've got my mics that are here, always with me everywhere I go. I've also got my Chave DJ, my Flare Con, so all of my wireless uplighting when I'm using the product with Sound Switch, everything's all transmitted wirelessly. I've got a USB hub in the back. I've got my MacBook power supply, which I always keep an extra one in here just in case. And then down below, you can't really see it, but I've got a Furman power conditioner there, which is powering all these devices. And then another USB, it's a little dark here, but I got another USB charger on the front as well for my phone or my iPad. You know, having that available at the gig is super handy. Let's jump back over to the controller layout. So the 7000, you know, it's for me, it's one of the most comfortable layouts that I've ever mixed on a DJ controller. I love, you know, the mixer section is quite spacious, but I love having these deck controls right down each side of the deck. So I can quickly just browse through tracks, and there's no confusion whether I'm loading it to the left or the right. I just press in on this encoder here, and I can quickly load. Same goes for my right deck. Again, it has an independent browse control, so we can just scan for the track we want and then just push in to load. What's also cool about the 7000 is you have all of these global commands or buttons here that will allow you to jump into your library or you know, adjust the Serato GUI based on what you're looking for. So I can find tracks, I can load them to the prepare folder just by pressing load prep. I can jump into my files area. I can show different panels within the software. Right now we're looking at the recording window. You can show your effects, your samples, and then you can close it if you don't like to see any of those panels. But it's nice having those right here, accessible on the controller to quickly dive in and tailor the application to your liking. You can also sort here. There's a couple of different printed options underneath these buttons. So the orange print means anything that's printed in orange, once you press this button, you'll be able to sort by that. So I can quickly just hold down this sort button and I can sort things by key, and I can sort things by artist or title, depending on which one I press. I typically mix, you know, with BPM and key as my sorted columns. Another thing I love about the 7000 is the layout of the microphones. It's very clear to me, you know, which microphone is where. I've got my microphones also labeled too. I've got mic 2 here, so I know that when I pair this up, I typically pair it to the right side over on mic 2. And just being able to quickly, you know, navigate to a side rather than having to think about which mic I'm using for each function. It just makes it easier having them laid out on both sides. With the Serato expansion pack for pitch and time, which is included with the 7000, you have access to key change and key sync. And on the 7000, you can quickly change the key just by turning the key encoder. And I'm just turning it to the left, going down in semitones. If you want to reset it, you just press it in. Again, we'll go up. And then you can also do key sync by holding down the key lock button for 2 seconds. Let's jump over and see if we've got some questions coming in now. All right, so we've got one. Dave from Facebook asked, I just saw he did on inverting the lights. Any way of controlling the brightness of the lights around the jog wheel? Currently there is not, that's why we have that inverted function there. Typically, lights are usually controlled by resistor values, but I can investigate with our engineering team to see if there's some way that we can refine the light if you're finding them too bright. That is one of the reasons why I use the inverted option. So yeah, again, like we did last week on our, or 2 weeks ago on our live stream, everything that you guys, all your comments, you know, we're collecting all this feedback, and if it's possible, we're gonna bring that feature forward for you guys. So James from Facebook asks, hi, what flight case are you using, please? So the case that I'm using here, this is a Pro X case. So this is the Pro X case for the MC7000. It has a single U rack, or 2 U rack space below the controller. And then again, on the back, I've got another space there for my power conditioner. But, you know, Pro X makes them, Odyssey makes them, UDG makes great cases. There's so many different options out there. Make sure that you're going to, you know, your different vendors and seeing which one will work best for you. I also use a gig bag as well. So when I'm playing in a bar or a nightclub, I typically just put it into the gig bag because I usually don't need all the microphones and everything else that comes along with this case. But this is perfect for my mobile stuff. So Brian from Facebook asked, how can you select different cue points with tone play? Maybe this means pitch and play. Yes, so pitch and play is on the player, I'm sorry, on the performance pads on one of your decks. If you press Shift plus Sampler, you can now get into a pitch play mode, but you gotta have some hot cues set first. So whatever hot cue you leave with and you go into pitch play mode, you can then play that in different octaves. So again, it's whatever cue point you left off on last is going to be the controller or the pitch that you're controlling. Let's load up a different track. So I'm going to beat jump a bit. I've got my beat jump mapped actually on this device to my parameter left and right buttons, which is super handy as well. One of the later updates in Serato Pro gives you the ability. So let's see if I open up my MIDI and we go to deck 1, temporary cue. Yeah, so you can see that I've got my beat jump buttons here. They're mapped to channel 5, note 40, and that's the parameter left button. And then if I go over to the right one, it's channel 5, note 41, and that's the right parameter button. I also mapped the 8 and the 16 beat as a shift function of these two buttons, which is handy because typically when I'm mixing, I'm usually jumping forward at 8 beat or 16 beat increments. So I just quickly hit Shift plus the left one. I know I'm in 8 beat increments, and then I jump through at 8 beats. Or if I press Shift plus the parameter button 2 or the parameter right button, now I'm at 16, and I can quickly just jump through by pressing the parameter button. So that's a useful tip. Serato opened this up. I'm not sure which version I've got here. It's not the latest, but I'm running 2.02. So it's in 2.02, the ability to map your hardware. So definitely take advantage of that. You know, we offer a ton of controls on the unit, but maybe those controls aren't exactly what you need as a DJ. So having the ability to custom MIDI map allows you to, again, just further refine this instrument or utility for whatever purpose you may need it for. So George from Facebook asks, is there a mapping for Tractor? Yes, absolutely, there's a mapping for Tractor. So if you go to denondj.com, go to support at the top right, and then under that support there'll be a drop down for downloads. Just go into the controller section, you'll see the MC7000 there, and there's a Tractor mapping as well. So 100% Tractor is available for the MC7000. All right, so let's go over some more features. A lot of the stuff is self-explanatory, but if you guys aren't familiar with the controller, I want to kind of give you a rundown of some things that I use. So across the top, you've got all of your effects. And right now, we're not showing effects in Serato, but if I press panel, you can see my effects page now, and I can see that I have Epic Reverb in one. I have delay in my slot 2. You can change the timing with the beat knob. And then in slot 3, I've got my clean echo out because I like to cheat when I'm mixing and I echo out a lot. And you can change the timing with that, with the beats. Once you get past the halfway point, that's when you get the echo out effect. What's also cool is you can just press in on the beats knob and then quickly reset to one beat. You can also change the effects, so those are the 3 that I have loaded. I typically use the most, but if you hold down Shift and press the on button, you can scroll through the list, or just quickly go through the list one by one. You can also press Shift and hold the, or turn the knob, the effect parameter knob, and you can quickly scroll through that list as well. And you can load up any effect that you want in any 3 of those, depending on which effects packs you actually have installed. Ryan from Facebook asks, will there be any more firmware updates on the 7000? Great question. There could potentially be a firmware update. What features are you looking for? Let us know in the comments. If there's a reason for us to update the firmware, we certainly will. At this point in time, it's fully featured. There's really nothing to improve on unless there comes a new OS with compatibility reasons. Then we would update to support the new OS. But again, let us know what you want to see, and if it's possible, we can certainly take a look at adding that to the firmware. Cool, so let's go through a couple of more things. The assign is pretty self-explanatory. It assigns it to whatever deck you're working with. I typically work in a 2-deck layout, so I've got it assigned to deck 1. Here are the browse controls that we talked about. Being able to go back, quickly browse through your list. Back jumps you back and forth between the folders or your crates. You got to stay in this cleared tracks crate just to ensure that this stuff stays up on its social channel. Below all those, you have your deck controls, so we can switch between deck 1 and deck 3. Deck 3 is kind of in an off state at this point because I have it set to line or phono. Typically, when I use this as a mobile, at a mobile event, I'll put this to line or phono, and this is where I'll run my iPad. But you can quickly put it back to USB, and then it's available as a deck in Serato, Tractor, or whatever third-party software you're using. So go back to deck 1. Below your deck buttons, you have a vinyl. This means, again, that if you're touching it, it's not going to stop the deck acting like a turntable. Just will allow you to pitch bend forward and back without actually affecting the playhead or the position of the playhead. Slip mode allows you to do things on top of the timeline without affecting the timeline, so I can scratch. As soon as I remove my hand, everything resumes at the place it would be had I not put my hand on the deck. And that also works with rolls, as well as the stop time. Drew from YouTube asks, is there going to be a fix for the problem that a lot of people are having with the play and Q buttons breaking? So yeah, if you're having problems with your Q and your play buttons, definitely reach out to Service Center near you. Yeah, we can get it fixed for you. It shouldn't be a problem. Just let us know. Contact our support team. They're more than able to help you out. We'll get you to a service center and we'll get those repaired up for you if you've got problems with them. All right, going through some more of the features here. You have the ability to adjust your beat grid from the unit as well. So if I hold down the adjust button, I can expand or collapse the actual grid. I can shrink it and make it a variable grid. I can slide the grid by holding the slide, left or right. And then I can set or clear the grid completely just by pressing Shift and one of those corresponding buttons. The transport section has sync as well as cue and play. You can also hold down Shift and go back to the beginning of the track with the cue. Stutter as well. And jumping over to the performance pads, actually we got a question coming in, let me answer that first. So Paul is asking from YouTube, he says, since upgrading to version 1.2 last year, scratching does not feel as fluid. Others have said the same on the forum. Will there be an update for this? So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you didn't catch that, make sure you go back and take a look at that. I show you how to walk through the hardware settings mode. That will allow you to fine tune that control depending on your environment, because that can change depending on the power in that environment. So maybe you need it to be more sensitive or less sensitive, and that hardware settings mode will allow you to set that. But again, if you're still having problems after going through that, get in touch with the service center or our support team or our service center, and we'll definitely take a closer look at that and see what's really going on. But yeah, appreciate the feedback, and yeah, just get in touch with our support team if that doesn't help you out. Going over to the performance pad area, you've got your hot cues, pretty self-explanatory. I don't have much set here, but you can quickly set them by tapping them in. Slip mode is active, so if I press it, it's going to jump to that position, but then come back to where the playhead normally would be. And then you can quickly delete them by holding shift and pressing any corresponding pad that you wish to delete. The second loop mode is a loop. I'm sorry, the second cue mode is a cue loop mode. So whenever you trigger one of these, it just sets a loop at whatever the last specified loop size was. And then you can exit just by pressing the pad again. You've got rolls at predetermined sizes. So you got a 1 beat here, half beat, quarter, and then eighth. And then below that are your beat jump buttons as well. So the inner ones are to adjust your beat jump size, and then the outside ones will actually commit that change. And if you aren't seeing this on your device, make sure you go into your preferences, and it's one of these menus here, enable beat grid, oh yeah, right here. So show beat jump controls. Make sure that is enabled in your application if you're not seeing those beat jumps. Otherwise, you'll see 4 pads all highlighted or illuminated in a light blue, which means that they're all rolls at different time divisions. All right, so Jamie from Facebook asks, is the mixer a standalone mixer? It is, absolutely, yes. So the MC7000 is a 4-channel digital mixer, so that means you can run DVS into it. As I mentioned before, you can run an iPad or a media player on the outside as well. Just set all those channels over to line. So see, on each channel strip, each one of my channels has a line or USB. And in some cases on channels 3 and 4, you've got line or phono. So those are going to be for your DVS. If you want to use DVS with Serato, make sure you're running it in channels 3 or 4. And then on the back of the mixer, you're going to want to put those to phono or line as well, depending on which type of media source you're using. Brian says, when switching decks 1 and 3, I'm experiencing a lag or delay with the pitch slider. Is this a common issue or just my laptop? Yeah, it's hard to say. There's lots of variables that can come into play. I'm not sure what system you're actually working with as far as a laptop goes, but that's one of those settings that you might want to check out the MIDI transmission interval time. And if you are noticing some lag, maybe you want to try bumping that up or stepping that down and see if that gives you any improvements for that. And again, if you still have problems after going through those hardware settings, definitely get in touch with our support. You shouldn't experience any lag whatsoever, as long as your computer is meeting the minimum system requirements. And those are also listed on the product page. So take a look at that, reference your computer and what you're using against that list. And if you're meeting the spec, those settings don't help you, contact support. We'll figure it out. All right, so yeah, so if I didn't mention in the beginning, the MC7000 is a dual USB controller, so you can use 2 computers. I actually have just a single computer hooked up right now, but I've got my iPad hooked up as a secondary computer. So let's see if I jump over, switch my apps. And what you want to do is when you want to use a secondary computer, I do this all the time when I'm playing out with my friends, you just quickly press this USB 1 or USB 2 button. But by default, it will power up in whatever connection you've made on the rear panel. So I've got USB 1 I'm using for my computer, and then USB 2 I'm using for my iPad. You switch over to my other camera here. I'm going to set this guy up on USB 2. And I just press play on the deck, and you can see over here on my iPad, I've got the brand new Algorithm DJ Pro, which is pretty cool. So I can trigger everything from the controller. set new hot cues. So that's really great for, you know, having that peace of mind, that backup. Or sometimes I just plug in this iPad with this controller and just go out like that. So definitely shout out to Algorithm for creating that app and adding support for the MC7000, because that experience is pretty awesome. It's really great just to be able to go between a laptop and an iPad, or two laptops. You know, again, it speaks to the flexibility and the power of this device. So Algorithm, once again, they did a great job on that application. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check them out, because that will give you the ability to stream from Spotify, your Apple Music, and all your personal music in your collection as well. So yeah, so going back to performance features, if we go to, we talked about the roll, there's save loops as well. I typically don't save loops, but if you wanted to, you can save them and they'd all be stored here, all 8 of them. You've got your slicer, which is a slicer loop, the first one. And then you've got a traditional slicer that will continue to progress through the track. I'm sorry, this is the looping slicer. The first one is the slicer that moves continuously through the track. And then you've got your sampler. I think I've got some, let's see. I've got, what do I have my sampler assigned to? So if I hit my panel button, load up my samples. All right, and I've got it set to deck A and going out on channel 4. And the volume was all the way down. All right. Banks A, play. Yeah, you can tell that I don't really use the sampler a whole lot, but I've got all my samples in here. I can trigger them from the controller, and then I can set the output, whatever it is here in the application. Was it muted? All right, so let's jump back to some questions. All right, so DJ Rampa from YouTube asked, are there any particular reason you use track 3 for a line item? I use 4 for my line item because I keep the device I'm using on that side. Yeah, I think I use it for the same reason. That's why I use 3, is because I typically have my iPad on the left of the controller when I play out. I have my iPad here just for this video purpose, but typically when I'm playing out, I have it on my left-hand side. I think I've used it on my right as well, but I guess it depends on where I'm at and how much space I have available to me. All right, so moving on from the performance features, you've got your traditional looping. Let's load up a different track here. Turn off slip mode. That gets me every time. I go back. I'll use the needle drop. Back to the beginning. Auto loop. Just press it in. Let's see, my size is set to 4 beats. Serato's got great looping too. It's all seamless looping, so I can just trim it, make it smaller. And then get out by pressing loop again. And you can also manually loop on the 7000 by holding shift and go in. And then you can make it bigger or smaller with the half and double time buttons. And then the parameter buttons are used for your performance pads, or if you've remapped them, and that's exactly why it wasn't working for me in the slicer, is because I forgot to remap those to be beat jump. So again, yeah, if you're remapping and you're using that remapping function, make sure that you remember that. And if you're trying to use a different function, if it's remapped, it's not going to have the same standard function as it normally would shipping out of the box. You also have a 100mm long pitch fader, which is high resolution. And then you've got a stop time knob here. Sensor. And then if you hold down shift while you press the sensor, you got to reverse. Press shift again to get out of it. Each mic has the mic 1 has a 2-band EQ, highs and lows. Mic number 2, you've got your tone control as well as an echo for both microphones. And once that's engaged, again, that will be over both mics. We talked about the decks. We talked about the mixer. It's a it's a full mixer. It's a full digital mixer. You can use line inputs. You can use laptops, iPads. Whatever media source you've got, throw it at the 7000. It will handle it without a doubt. Each one of the channels has 3-band EQ as well as filters. Standard queuing, so you can preview things in your headphones. In the center, you've got your booth output. You've got your headphone mixing, headphone levels. Oh, and this is why my sampler wasn't working, because the sampler volume was all the way down. We're doing it live. So let's see. Can we hear the samples now? Yeah, here's my samples. So these are some samples I have left over from the last time I used it, and which might have been Halloween or my Christmas party, I'm not really sure. But that's where it is. The sampler volume right there in the center, don't forget that. Moving down, you've got a replaceable crossfader. So if you have any problems with your crossfader or you want to switch it out with an Innofader Mini, just pop those two, I believe they're 8mm screw heads, pop those out, drop in your mini fader, and you're solid. Let's take a look at the questions coming in. So we got a question coming in from one of our social outlets saying, MIDI map is available for Tractor 2, but not Tractor 3. Is there any luck to have mappings for Tractor 3? Well, that's a great point. Yeah, they did just release Tractor 3. I created the map for Tractor 2, so it looks like I got some work to do. Yeah, so we'll look into adding that support soon. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, we talked about the mixer. We talked about the ability to switch between different media sources. The right deck is pretty much the same as your left deck. You've got your pitch faders on the outside. This is a this is a mirrored layout. So everything is kind of inverted of what the left deck is. And everyone's got their preference on this, whether they like mirrored or non-mirrored. It really just becomes, it's sort of just the way you play, and once you get comfortable in the workflow, either one will really work for you. I have no problem mixing on this because I've mixed on it for a while. Jumping over the Prime 4, there's a different mixing style, but I like that as well. So it really just depends on the application. So we got a question coming in from Frank from Facebook, and he's asking, which adapter are you using for the iPad? So when it comes to adapters, that's one thing you definitely don't want to cheap out on. I've got the official Apple connector. It's the camera connection kit, I believe. So it's got the lightning charging port as well as the USB camera connection little icon on it. I think it was $69 or $79. It's worth it because, like I said, taking the 7000 and messing with it with just an iPad is a pretty cool experience, and it saves you from having to carry a MacBook or a laptop with you, or just it's just a backup, a great backup. So another question coming in from Facebook. Dave says, I'm not sure if it's a hardware or software issue. Have you ever experienced the play button not responding when switching back and forth between decks 1 and 3 or decks 2 and 4? I haven't, but it sounds like what you may be talking about is platter touch sensitivity. Sometimes if a platter detects a touch event or your hand being on the platter, when you press play, there won't be any action on the play. The deck won't play because it believes that the deck is being held down. So if you're experiencing that quite frequently, I would suggest take a look at those hardware settings in that hardware settings mode and maybe turn the sensitivity down a little bit, and then let us know if you're still experiencing that issue. All right, what else can we talk about? Well, I've used the 7000 for, like I said, 2 years now, and it's served me very, very well. Done hundreds of weddings with it, dozens of bar and nightclub gigs with it. It's a great, solid piece. It's well-rounded. It's versatile. You can use it with a computer, an iPad, third-party applications, Serato, Virtual DJ, Tractor, Algorithm DJ. It's really a Swiss Army knife of controllers, and that dual USB functionality is great for the handoff, also for the backup. Yeah, I've loved my experience with the 7000. I know I'm a little biased because I did work on the product, but it's been a great controller, and it sounds amazing in the club or in any environment. All right, so we don't have a whole lot of different questions coming in. So I think just the last thing I want to point out is, the rear panel. It's hard to see, but I'll just give you a quick look again. Go to my mobile camera here. You can see that I've got a couple of XLRs here. So the booth on this are both XLR. You've got master XLR, and then you've got a number of inputs and outputs RCA for your media players. And then you've got your microphones. Mic 1 is a combination, and then mic 2 is a 1/4 inch. And then I got my dual USB there. Again, I would highly recommend, if you're a mobile guy, invest yourself in one of these cases with the rack mounts, because now you can put your mics in there. You can put all of your lighting, hardware, your USB charging ports and all that stuff in one case. And when I show up, I just drop my pigtail down. It has all my XLRs, my DMX output, and my power, and I'm ready to go. All right, guys, I think that's it, all the time we have for today's live stream, but I appreciate you guys stopping by. Thanks again for all the comments. Don't forget to check us out on our next live stream. Let us know what you guys want to hear about. What do you want us to see? What do you want to see us talk about next? So get that feedback in, and we'll make that video for you, and we'll do it again live from our world headquarters here in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you next time.